Welcome to the Moneymakers podcast, brought to you by Sophia. Sophia is an exciting education platform for women with a goal to increase diversity and inclusion in early stage investing. This podcast is a finance, innovation, and investing show for amazing women everywhere of all ages. Each fortnight, we will feature an inspiring woman from the investing and finance sector, or a female founder with a special focus on Asia. To receive a 10% discount on all of our courses, go to sophiawomen.com and use promo code podcast10. And today's guest is Helen McGuire, co-founder and CEO of Diversely. Welcome, Helen.
Thanks, Tanya. Good to be with you.
Good to have you at last. It's been a while, so thank you for agreeing to come on. We're super excited to have you here. Can we start with a quick introduction to yourself?
Yes, of course. As you rightly said, I'm Helen. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Diversely. I've been in the D&I space now for what feels like a very long time. So I kind of started a women's careers platform back in 2015, long before #MeToo or Black Lives Matter, as it is now anyway, was in the public consciousness, I would say. So yeah, I've been working in this space to really help inclusion of underrepresented groups in the workplace for about 7 years now. But prior to that, I've been a bit of a chameleon, I guess, and taken a few left turns in my career, that's for sure.
You have indeed. And I want to ask you about some of those. So first of all, if our audience have not already guessed, you and I come from the same country. You studied at Leeds University in the UK, and you studied geography and French. Now, what did you want to do exactly?
Good research. God, it's taking it back a bit, isn't it? Well, to be honest, it wasn't so much what I wanted to do, it's more what I didn't want to do. And I think, coming out of school, university, a natural thing that everybody at my school did or was supposed to want to do. I studied English, French, German, geography for A-level, and I didn't want to do English because it was a 4-year course and involved reading far too many books back to back. I didn't want to do French or German for the same reason. University wasn't massively appealing to me, I have to be honest. And so geography was my only other option, pretty much. And it probably wasn't my strongest subject, but I really enjoyed it. And I think, if I look at my bedside table now, I've got a copy of the National Geographic and also a book about geography and its influence on the political landscape. So it's obviously had something of an impact, I would say, but it's not as though I really went into it thinking, oh, I'm going to be a town planner or something like that.
Yes, yeah. Coincidentally, I also chose geography and French. So that's why it piqued my interest. So you came out of university and you went to work for the BBC for 8 years. Is that right? Have I got that right?
Well, you've skipped a little bit, I would say.
Have I? Okay. What did I skip?
You've probably skipped a very painful period in my life where I left university, probably quite wisely. I left university, and went traveling actually for a year. And that's what really kind of opened up my horizons. Very stereotypical, I know. But honestly, I'm a girl from Coventry who doesn't come from a family who went to university. Most of my family are still there. There's a few people, including my sister, who aren't, but there's no sort of precedent really for me, leaving Coventry, even, to be honest, in my sort of near family. And so, I knew there was something else out there, I think is probably the best way I can describe it. I knew I wanted to find a different way of living. I wanted to explore different cultures and different ways of people living and doing different things. And I was just desperate to kind of break those boundaries a little bit and see what else was going on. So I went with that in mind and not a huge amount else. And whilst I was there, that was when I really thought, what was going to make me the happiest in career-wise would be to follow my passion, which at that time was music and very much kind of radio and music industry. And that's when I really decided that that's what I wanted to do. And I came back and realized that that was an incredibly difficult path to tread. There are just not many jobs in the music industry, full stop. It's a hard industry to get into. And I knew I needed to be in London and was, planning to move to London anyway. My best friend at the time lived there, and so I had that one connection. And so I worked for a while for Barclays when I got back from my trip as a PA, and had the opportunity to move down to London with that team. That lasted about 6 weeks, and then they restructured the company and told me I no longer had a job. Just taken on a years very expensive rent in London that I could no longer afford, and eventually got into the Discovery Channel. And it was kind of aligned with what I wanted to do. It was in media, at least. It happened to be just over the road from BBC Radio 1. And over a period of time, I made some connections at the BBC and managed to get a foot in the door at Radio 1, basically making tea for John Peel's evening program, and for Trevor Nelson and a number of other DJs there at the time. And I was just doing that, weekends, evenings. I mean, I'd finish my day job at Discovery. I'd hop across the road without them noticing, because it would not have gone down well, and work there till sort of 11, 12 at night. And then I'd be back in the next morning. I'd take all my holidays doing that. I absolutely loved it. It was massively my passion point. I was desperate for a career in that space, in that industry. And I worked for free for about 3 years to get it. And then, yes, I got my job at the BBC, but it was by no means an easy journey, that one.
Wow, I really did miss out a chunk, didn't I? And because let me just recap. So first and foremost, you said you did geography and French, and you didn't know what you were going to do with it. Then you went off for a year's travel. I would say you used your geography and your French. Then you came back, and wow, you really went for it and dedicated yourself to doing, 3 years towards something that you really wanted to make a career of, and finally it paid off. But wow, what perseverance.
It definitely took a lot of perseverance. There were a lot of very frustrated moments, but I think that's just, I don't know, maybe I'm just a glutton for punishment, because I feel like whatever I choose, it's never that easy. So yeah, history carries on repeating itself in that form, for sure.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. And what took you from the UK to Dubai, which was probably your first overseas move?
Yeah, no, good question. Not something, and I think this is probably the biggest left-hand handbrake turn that I've had. I would say, yeah, definitely. So I did my stint at the BBC and had a really wonderful time there for 8 years, and ended up producing all sorts of really cool music shows. But I think I sort of hit 30 and thought, hang on a minute, this isn't massively sustainable. I don't want to be a 45-year-old raver in a field at the weekend. Like 25 years younger than me, that's just not cool. I need to figure out a way of using these skills in something that is a bit more sustainable, that earns me a bit more money, to be honest. I mean, it's not a particularly well-paid profession.
Yeah,
it has more longevity. And I was just, I just wanted to get into the business side of things. I think I just done my time and sort of ticked all those boxes. And so I started to research and went into I guess kind of broadcast PR, content, marketing, digital. I did that for about 1.5 years, and then was poached by a digital music platform that was launching in the UK and Europe. So I launched that across about 1 year. And at that time, I met my now husband through one of those companies I was working for. And he was going backwards and forwards from Dubai. I was a girl who lived in the East End, right? Like I bought my flat in Dalston. I never really had any money. I didn't make my career decisions based on money. I mean, I quite often was taking pay cuts just to move and get into a new industry or whatever. So it just wasn't my focus. So Dubai was really, I mean, to say it was not on my radar is a massive understatement. It wasn't on my radar. It was also seriously uncool in my peer group.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody went to Dubai. Like, we were underground music people, for want of a better phrase. Like, we were kind of artists and designers and, fashion people or whatever. People did not go to Dubai. But that all changed when I met my now husband, who, just lived in a different world to me, and to most of my peer group, but sort of opened my eyes to a different way of living, and took me over to Dubai on a work trip that he was on. And I just fell in love with it. I just absolutely fell in love with it. I thought, this is brilliant. I've lived this life for 12 years in London. I've sort of done my time, really. I'm ready for a new challenge. I'm ready for a whole new landscape. And I, by that point, done sort of 2.5 years in the more, I wouldn't call it corporate world, but as corporate as I'm going to get, kind of PR and marketing and stuff. And it was great. And, landed a job in advertising at BBDO, which was, a whole other journey. And we moved probably 1.5 years after we met, I think. And, we were engaged by the time we got there, and married a year later.
Oh, wow. That's fast. So you had, up until this point, you had a bit of a varied career, a lot of radio, a lot of content, a lot of music, a lot of, you talked about marketing towards the end there, and advertising. What took you to Antler? Like, how did you move from thinking of, working? I mean, to be honest with you, listening to your career to this up to this point, it's not typically corporate. So it's not like I can say you had this huge long career at, one of the banks, and then all of a sudden wanted to become an entrepreneur. You actually sounded already quite sort of free-spirited, pushing the boundaries, certainly pushing, persevering and showing the grit that a lot of entrepreneurs need. So you clearly already had that within you. But what pushed you towards heading towards Antler and joining their sort of entrepreneurial scheme that they have?
Yeah. So, yes, I think that, as you say, the thread of my career is really communications, and sitting really on the boundaries of whatever industry I've been in, as you say, kind of trying to push those boundaries. When I was in music, it was always about undiscovered talent and undiscovered music, and bringing that to the fore. When I worked in marketing, it was about finding undiscovered content providers and creators, filmmakers, artists, things like that, and getting them in front of big brands. It was always about sort of pushing the underdog, I would say. And I'd always thought I would do something for myself. I come from an entrepreneurial family. My dad's an entrepreneur. His dad was an entrepreneur. I'm surrounded, my husband, all of his family, my sister now as well. So we're kind of cut from that cloth, I would say. And it started to feel very weird to me, just being in a situation where I had so little control over my eventual outcomes. What I put in was not equaling what I got out. And I just felt very hemmed in. And so I'd always had this idea, wanting to do my own thing. And I'd explored a couple of different avenues or whatever. It was actually when I had my first child in 2014. And I really enjoy photography. This sounds like a sidebar. It's not. It's leading in the direction of answering your question, I promise. And I joined a photography class because I had 8 months maternity leave, and frankly, I just got a bit bored. And so I joined this photography class thinking I'll just improve my photography skills. And the teacher at the time, when we first started the class, went around the room and said, okay, introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? And everybody in there was probably a little bit older than me, or around about the same age, all women, about 12 of us. And every single one of them said, oh, hi, my name is blah, blah, blah. I used to be head of something. I used to have my own business. I used to do this, that, and the other. But now, I'm just a mum, and I'm here to learn how to use my camera that my husband bought me, or whatever. And I thought, bloody hell, like, that's really sad. And, it got to my turn, and I said, yeah, I'm taking a break, but I'm going back to work in September. And at the end of the class, a few of them came up to me and said, look, you work in the area I used to work in. Can you help me get a job? And I was like, Not really, but I suppose I can put you in touch with somebody. And it really sparked something where I just felt massive. No, perhaps sorry is the wrong word, but certainly kind of, this is really unfair. Like, what an unfair situation that these women who are clearly very bright, have career histories behind them, have skills, are sitting in a photography class because they've got nothing else to do. It just doesn't seem right. And that's really what started my entrepreneurial journey. About a year later, I launched Hopscotch, which was a women's careers platform in the Middle East that helped women to get back into the working world through initiatives, training and recruitment. We built that to a group of about 20,000 women globally eventually, and then expanded that into Singapore when I moved there in 2018 with my family, at which point I had 2 kids under sort of 2.5. And, it was great. It made a huge impact, but it was an incredibly frustrating business to run because I could only help a handful of women, out of those 20,000 that had registered, that had followed me, that had, come to events, whatever it might be. The brutal fact was I could only get a handful of them an opportunity with an organization. It just wasn't scalable.
Yeah.
And it also only dealt with women. It didn't deal with other underrepresented groups, which I was, slowly coming to mind on. And that's what led me to Antler. So that frustration, that kind of success versus challenge is really what got me there.
Yeah. So was it after Hopscotch and you had the idea, the seed of Diversely, that you went to Antler? Would that be right?
Yeah. So I basically had the idea for Diversely whilst I was at Antler. So Antler kind of said, look, we like you. We like your background. We like the skills that you can bring. And we love the problem that you're trying to solve. We really hate your current business. That's okay, because I really hate it as well. So I went in there on the proviso that I wasn't trying to kind of build out Hopscotch or find a co-founder for it.
Yeah.
It was very much like, okay, this is where I've got to with this. How else can we solve this problem? And that's what I spent 3 months, at the very beginning, just relentlessly pursuing. And I knew I needed a tech co-founder in order to be able to do it. I knew that tech was going to be the answer because it's really the only scalable way of getting to the root of the issue.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what that was going to look like when I got in there.
The Moneymakers podcast is brought to you by Sophia, the place for women to learn, invest, and change the world. Sophia is an education platform for women, providing much-needed courses on personal finance and investing, with a goal to increase diversity and inclusion in early-stage investing. Go to sophiawomen.com and use promo code podcast10 to receive a 10% discount on all of our courses. Could you give us a little overview of how Diversely started out, what it started out as and what it is today? And then also how you met Haley, your co-founder.
Yeah. So Haley, I knew through Hopscotch. Haley was MD of Girls in Tech at the time in Asia. We'd met a couple of times because we'd done similar events. So we'd actually collaborated on events previously. We'd always got along. We'd always kind of bonded over a few common frustrations and issues. And just, I think we had a good sort of energy match generally. And when I joined Antler, the initial idea for Diversely that I came out of it with was some kind of way of reducing bias in the way that job ads are written. So with Hopscotch, I used to spend hours and hours and hours rewriting job ads that my clients had sent to me to post on our job board because they just weren't fit for purpose. I read them and I just thought, there's no way any women I know are going to apply to this job. You've just got to rephrase this. It just doesn't come across well. So I knew that was a problem, and I knew that there was a sort of tech way. I collaborated with a couple of people within the program, and I knew that there were sort of technical ways of helping to do that on an automated basis so that you can attract, more diverse talent through your job ads that you post out. So that's kind of where it started. And then I'd started to think when I left Antler, okay, what other elements of a process, of the recruitment process, could we also tackle in terms of making it bias free, you know, in terms of where you post jobs out, in terms of understanding the data really around D&I. So where are you now? Where do you want to get to? And being able to track that. So I'd had all of these ideas and thoughts around what it could look like. And I'd been connected with some really, really valuable people who became instrumental in creating the platform, one of whom was the Centre for Applied Linguistics at the University of Nottingham in the UK, who'd been doing this research around job ads, unbeknownst to me, funded by the UK government for about 4 years. And they just had a ton of data on this stuff, but they had no way of making anything useful out of it. They knew what the problem was and they could demonstrate the problem, and they had all the data and the language constructs and so on behind it, but they didn't have any way of making it into something that was actually a solution to that problem. So I started talking to another couple of partners about, you know, different routes. But I just kept saying at the end of these phone calls, guys, I know my job is to find a tech co-founder. Otherwise we can't make this happen. We know what we want to do, but I need to find that person. And I was driving around one day and just completely out of nowhere, I suddenly thought, if I could partner with, you know, if I could invite one person to be my co-founder, who could it be? And Hayley just popped into my head, and I'd not spoken to her for quite a while, but I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to give it a go. And I dropped her a note and said, do you fancy catching up? And I remember the conversation. I parked up because this was sort of middle of the pandemic. We were all on lockdown. I parked up somewhere and just had a 45-minute conversation with Hayley about this. And we were both really excited. And I was like, look, I need a co-founder. Do you fancy it? She said, well, I'm supposed to be joining Antler's next cohort, which would have been the one after mine. But I was looking for a problem to solve that I'm passionate about. I would obviously have been looking for a co-founder as well. Why don't we just get started on this and see where we get to? And within a couple of months, we'd, you know, made the commitment that we were going to work on it together. She didn't join the program. And that was that, really.
Wow, that's amazing. I actually genuinely didn't know that story. The timing is fantastic because, you know, for being an investor into founders, I know just how hard work it is. And also through my own experience as well with co-founders, it is the biggest problem for most small businesses, for startups, is finding the right partners, partner problems, partner challenges. It's always, or nearly always, the number one problem, the biggest hurdle, people. Yeah. And it's so important. And you do feel like you're almost married to this person, or perhaps even more than a marriage, because it's just constant all day, every day. It's relentless. And it's super important. So that's amazing that you were both at similar positions to be able to commit to something like this, because committing to starting a business is no small feat, obviously. And your skill sets complementing each other, and you obviously liked each other. That's a huge hurdle. So, wow.
Massively. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I kind of had to pinch myself, and still do, really, because you're right, you know, it is like a marriage. And I actually said to somebody the other day, I've spoken to Hayley every day for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's just on WhatsApp, whatever it is, but our messages and calls are kind of endless. And
yeah.
And we, you know, touch wood, we've never fallen out once. And I know one of the things that, you know, when you go through a program like Antler, which is it's really hardcore, actually. It's a lot more difficult than they sort of put it out to be. And one of the things they always say is, oh, you know, it's all very well when you agree, but how do you disagree? Do you disagree well? You know, can you fall out and still get along? And we just don't really disagree on things. I think we just have we have very different skill sets, which is perfect. That's exactly what you need in a co-founder. Very different brains, but we work in a similar way on a day-to-day basis, and we have the same vision, and we are pretty much, you know, 100% aligned on that. That doesn't really change regardless of what, you know, life business throws at you. So I mean, I honestly pinch myself. I count my lucky stars really on that front, because you know, I'd had a couple of really not great experiences in trying to find tech co-founders. And it is, I mean, energy sapping is not even a word. It's demoralizing, it's depressing, it's difficult, it consumes everything that you're trying to do when really all you want to do is build a successful business. I know how hard that is.
And you talked about aligned vision. What is the vision for Diversely, and what does the future look like? Because you've both recently left, I think it feels recent, but time has stood still in Asia for the last 2 years. So it might not be that recent, but you both recently left Asia. So what was the catalyst there and for the business, the future? Haley, I think, is in Poland. Is that right?
Yeah, she is. Again, it was one of those very kind of serendipitous things on leaving Singapore. I think, again, we were very aligned on, we just can't live like that, right? I think we're both from a sort of background where being restrained in the way that, many people are currently quite restrained in many countries around the world, but specifically in Singapore for us, wasn't sustainable. We had an opportunity to get out. We were very lucky from each of our families' perspectives that it just worked out, and just strangely enough, we left within a few days of each other, and that wasn't planned. That was just kind of, I think we were just both energetically heading that way, and that is what came to happen. I'm in Dubai now. We left last August. And I'm in Dubai, and Haley's in Poland. I just came back from a trip over there, actually, which was brilliant. And it's brilliant. It works out really well because we'd always, to go back to your question about Diversely, the vision for Diversely is to make the world of work a more diverse place through decreasing bias in hiring. And so we've created this platform, which is a D&I platform. It's a D&I dashboard, off of which businesses can understand their current diversity, set their goals, and track towards them through using the bias-free tools that we've created, one of them with the University of Nottingham, as I mentioned. And we've always had a remote first policy because we believe that to attract the best talent, you have to cast your net as wide as you possibly can. And that means being as inclusive as you possibly can. That is the whole point of the platform. And it just, completely aligns with our internal kind of moral guidance as well. So working remotely has always been what we've done. Even when we were in Singapore, we only probably worked 2 days together. So now it works really well because I'm better positioned for a UK-US audience, which is where most of our clients are. Haley is tapped into the tech community and also very well positioned for our clients in the Western world, so to speak. So and it means that we get to travel and see each other, and we hire from all over the world. I mean, we've just hired a lady in Nigeria, lady in the Netherlands, and another guy in the UK, and we just see that as being the best way to find the best talent, really.
I love that. Yes, I can totally relate to the move, and again, amazing alignment of you both to be moving within days of each other. I mean, there was some reason to taking you both back to somewhat towards home, and great location for you both to be in. So I'm super excited to see where Diversely goes, and I'm a big fan of you both, and hopefully that comes through, and I champion you both as much as I can. And I know that you're awesome at championing women as well.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Tanya. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Helen. We hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Money Makers podcast, brought to you by Sophia, the education platform for women that increases diversity in early stage investing. Visit sophiawomen.com and use promo code podcast10 to receive a 10% discount on all our courses. Learn, invest, and change the world.